Hi guys, I'm here with Sarah Franzen, my business partner at REVZEN. I'm Emily Patillo. We are here because we have had a lot of questions about a recent product that we built. So I'll let you elaborate, Sarah, on why we wanted to talk about it.
I'm Sarah Franzen. Emily Patil is my brilliant partner, as she mentioned. Um, as many of you have seen, there was a recent hackathon which RevZen contributed an entry to that. I say RevZen holistically, but Emily is the builder behind that. And so we have had a lot of questions from our clients who are like, "Hey, tell me more about this." From friends, from other industry colleagues, and so we figured we would just talk today about what it is, how we got here, and answer some questions. I think with that, I would love for you, Emily, to give us a little bit of the background. Why are we here and how did this get started and all the good stuff?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say thank you to the Wheelhouse team for pushing this along and helping us push our own limits. These are things that I was working on beforehand. But when Wheelhouse came out with their hackathon and opened up their RM API and they provided all of this support, it really allowed us to actually build. So I had been getting really involved with building behind the scenes, things that I wanted to do, but I didn't necessarily have the data to do it. So I was working on front end access. I was having my agents log into Wheelhouse, but they were looking at things from the front end. And so I texted Andrew and I was like, hey, if you have a lot of stuff coming in on your end, sorry, just know that's me. It's intentional. Let me know if I'm doing anything wrong. And he texted me back and he was like, well, we're actually about to open up an API so you can access the back end. And so that's when we learned about the hackathon that they were having and we were super excited to build. So we ended up taking 2 awards from that hackathon, the best build from an RM shop and the People's Choice Award. So thank you to everybody that kind of helped us get here in our journey. But that's basically kind of how we ended up talking about it today. We have all these questions. What do we build? And just kind of understanding what it is because it seems super cool. But then again, we only had 3 minutes to present it. So wanted to kind of elaborate on what some of those things are.
Awesome. So you mentioned Wheelhouse, the hackathon, which was super cool. That raises the thought of just AI in general, right? Wheelhouse is an amazing tool. We use it. A lot of other people use it. We use a lot of other really cool tools too. And they all use some form of AI, which is the big buzzword these days. I don't even think it's a word, but you know what I mean. And I wanted to kind of lean into that a little bit because when you and I had talked, leading up to this and in the past, that was one of the things that really sparked, I think, the interest in building out this operating system and then Haystack as a result of that. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, like how AI influenced this platform, but also maybe kind of how it works specifically for our tool.
So great segue here because I think it goes into 2 different parts, right? AI is what allows us as revenue managers that are not coders to be able to build the tools that we couldn't before. So I'm talking about Cloud Code or Codex through Open API. That helps us close that gap. Things that we would have to go to a developer and say, okay, this is what we want. We would go to our partners, our vendors, and saying, okay, this is the gap that we have. But we're very nuanced in what we need. So, like, Sarah, if you ask for something, it might not be what most of the customers are wanting. So it might be very specific to us, but it's also very important to us. So AI allows us to be those builders and to bridge that because we never had that skill set before. Now, of course, we are data experts. And so it allows us to also build, but look at the underlying data and kind of deconstruct it and see if it's correct and all of that. So that's the first portion of it, kind of solving some pain points that we personally had in the industry or in our daily lives that we weren't able to get from our partners because it might not be relevant to them. It's just relevant to us. So I wanted to focus on a build that would help us in our daily lives serve our customers and just make our jobs faster. There are a lot of really, really cool tools that were built, that things that I never thought of. But our direction with this was really, how can we make our customers more money? How can we make our jobs easier? And how can we make sure that we're not missing certain things that, kind of fall in through a specific timeline? And we'll kind of get more into that later. But that's the first part of it. The second part of it that I was noticing is that, like you said, AI is a big buzzword. A lot of the vendors, they're trying to keep up with it and they're trying to add things on because they can also build faster than they could before. And so you see a lot of insights coming through certain platforms. Love that for them. But I think that where we were having some struggles is that we can't add the context to it. So it doesn't know what's in our heads to say, this is important to you. A lot of times there's not a way to snooze an alert that comes through, or that alert is, it's like, okay, that's cool, but here's the reason why that doesn't apply to us. But then we would have clients that would log in and they would see those AI alerts and they'd be like, what's going on? This says I should do something. Or an even worse example is worse or better, depending on how you look at it, is when you have an owner that's plugging in all of their data into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT, without context, is saying, oh gosh, this is what you should do. This is how you should change it. Or it would suggest things like maybe use an overbooking strategy. So there's a lot of good and bad information out there. And so, what we wanted to create was something that kind of bridged that gap with our own internal knowledge. So, one of the things that I recognized pretty early on is that we really, as hard as it is to do, we needed to get the knowledge out of our heads and onto paper, computer, documented somehow, you know. The information that's in our head doesn't exist online. Like, Sarah, where would you go to find that, right? If you had a question about a revenue problem, would you Google
Absolutely not.
it? What
Right.
would
I
you
mean,
do?
no, I would call you,
Exactly. You
right?
would call me, or you call another revenue manager, or
Yeah.
we would text somebody at 12 in the morning and be like, I can't figure this out. What is happening? And that's like one of the main reasons we started RevProf, right?
Well, and
Because,
that's one of the main reasons, we became friends initially, right?
right, right.
Because we needed each other because we didn't have that other resource. And so I think that's a really important distinction that you're making, because as you and I have talked over the years and recently with you building this really amazing thing, we have these wish lists, right? Oh, I wish that so and so would do this or that they would create this. Of course we want that. But how do we really get something like that that works for us? And I think
Right.
that's really where you've come in to build something that is us, right? And I'll let you kind of take that a little bit further. But that really is, I think, as the person who's the non-builder, the magic of this particular thing is that it's not just another platform that's taking things out of context or that's not including all of the nuance. That's what we're actually trying to do with this.
Right. That's that layer that's added onto it. So, for instance, like if you log into your key data dashboard and it says that 3 bedrooms are pacing behind, but you actually know that there's a reason they're pacing behind because you have a neighborhood wide outage, or they're doing construction, but it's not necessarily taken offline, or like for whatever reason, right? You're going to have a gazillion reasons why that might not be a worrisome alert. We don't really have a way to snooze it or say, okay, well, this is why, let's just not look at that. Or how can we strategize around that? And that's what I wanted to kind of come in and make sure that I can add in that context. So it's kind of like in two parts, right? So we have the context around it, and then we have the SOPs. And so I wanted to build solutions for both of those things where we're using our specialized knowledge. So, like, pacing behind might be a good thing if it's part of our strategy, right? So Pacing behind to what? Pacing behind the market, pacing behind last year. Well, you actually might intentionally want to be pacing behind. Maybe you're holding out your pricing, you're expecting higher demand. And if we can add that context in there, it could stop alerting us. Or if it kind of goes off course, it can alert us to, okay, well, we might need to course correct at this point. But then also just understanding what it is that we're doing with the SOPs. Like, what is a general usage of our practices? And how do we actually apply that to various scenarios? And so we had to go through and try to extract that information out of our heads. And I honestly think that is the most beautiful part of all of this because yes, we're kind of at the point where anybody and their brother can build an entire operating system. Yeah, it seems like a lot. It seems very hard, but I'm telling you, like, I had no experience in this and I was able to do it. Yeah, it did take me a while and it cost me a lot of money to do it, but we're at that point where that's no longer the roadblock. The roadblock is knowledge. And we did possess that. And so getting that out of our heads was super, super important and making sure that it applies to various scenarios because you don't want to have a one size fits all either. And so that's the additional context that we can add and we can continue to iterate. And that's where Sarah's been very, very, very instrumental in this because I only have my own experiences. You bring a depth of other experiences and to be able to add to that that are completely invaluable that I would not have on my own. So thank you for all of your help with that.
And I think that really is what is really unique, right? Like we've taken the time to download years over a decade each experience and what we've learned over that time, how we operate. I mean, it's a commitment, right? To be able to try to structure that. I don't know if anybody's really thought about trying to explain how you think, but
Oh
that
my
is that
gosh, it gets so difficult so quickly. It
yeah.
seems so linear, and then you realize it's like not just like a decision tree. It's like the Game of Thrones family tree.
It's like 4D. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But super important that that is the foundation of what we're doing, right? Because again, our priority with this as a tool, and again, we're not this is something that we use internally, but our priority with this is to be the best, most efficient revenue managers for our clients as possible. And so part of doing that, part of our due diligence and part of making sure that, we're doing that correctly and doing that well is making sure we're not just tossing this out to Google. This is not a Google question. This is help us kind of streamline how we go through and process throughout our workflow so that we can be the best for our clients, right? That's the ultimate goal. And in order to do that, the SOPs are central.
Right, right. And I think that it's worth mentioning that we do use certain LLMs to help us generate these SOPs. But I will tell
Absolutely.
you, and I'm sure that you can attest to this, as we've kind of gone through this, standardization process with RevProf. For those of you that aren't aware, Sarah and I co-founded RevProf, which is a nonprofit educational community organization for revenue managers and short term rentals. So we've been working on standardization for multiple years now. And in the beginning, we would be like, oh my gosh, it's so easy. And then you would ask ChatGPT a question and it would spit out these responses that are very hotel like or that just don't even apply. You have to sift through the nuggets of information that it gives you and kind of go through that. And so it's you can use it to kind of brain dump what's in your head, but it's not very good at taking what exists and making a holistic response. You as an expert still have to say, "Okay, use that, don't use that. I would never use that. Please don't ever tell anybody to do that again." Because I'm sure you've had some pretty crazy responses yourself. But it does allow us to kind of help structure the thoughts that are in our head so we can get that out and on paper. And then, even at that, we still have to iterate. There's still edge cases that we didn't think about in the beginning. So that's why we can't just turn it loose and say, make all of the decisions for us, because it still needs the expertise to say, this is important, that's not important. Or, hey, this is slightly different than how you explained it the first time. Would this still apply? And that's where it's helpful as a layer, not as a replacement quite yet.
Yeah. And I'm not convinced there's going to be a replacement because of all of
Right.
those things, right? Every situation is so unique. Each of our clients have very unique portfolios. Every portfolio has very unique homes. The knowledge that we put into this is stuff that you only acquire over years of experience, right? Like,
Right.
you can only say, well, don't think of it like a hotel, um, because you've thought of it. Like, should I be thinking of it like a hotel? And you've run through all of those different scenarios and you've been like, no, I can't think about it like that. So, what we actually use to serve as the foundation for this is not just, these binary yes no kinds of things. I think it's pretty cool in that regard, and I'm happy that it shares a brain with you. Like like it's a combination of our brains, which is also very scary if you think about it. Um but I think professionally it's probably pretty good.
Yeah. So, do you want to talk about the features?
Yeah, let's talk about the features.
I know it's part that gets me super excited because we had to lay the groundwork for the infrastructure because everybody has shiny tool syndrome and we all get excited about this new thing and we don't want to over under promise what exactly it is. And if in case I didn't clarify that enough, right now we're still very much in the iteration phase, right? So we're using this tool as a tool. It's like I said, not a replacement, but it does help surface things that we could not do on our own. Especially those repetitive tasks that are not edge cases. It could do it faster in general and on a different timeline. So uh, I think that most people here that are watching that maybe have watched the hackathon learned about the haystack feature. So, haystack is a component of the overall RevZen operating system, which I use in my daily revenue management, but we didn't have time to go into anything else because we only had 3 minutes. So if I went into an entire operating system, it was going to take, an hour to do, and nobody has an hour, in that type of competition. So Haystack is a way for us to surface alerts that we would normally find on a schedule because we have to look at data in all these different slices. So, Sarah, I don't know exactly how, like, as far as the timeline of how often you look at your data or like the the nuances of okay, this is the slice that I look at on Tuesday or this is the slice that I will look at right after that. But that's the only way that you can really do that. Otherwise, you're going to have all these different thoughts and you're going to lose something. It's the only way you can really like realistically keep track of it at scale. But what if something happens on Wednesday? And yeah, most of the time it's okay. You can wait until your next review. Maybe it's Thursday or so, but maybe it keeps happening on a Wednesday. And if you don't have some sort of alert system that kind of lets you know, then you could potentially be leaving money on the table. A lot of us, there we have secondary looks that we operate with, so we kind of catch that, but this just helps us do it a lot faster. So, Haystack is basically an alert system based off of the things that we typically look for in the different slices of data. Now, where it gets really cool is that it's also integrated with things that we would not normally have access to or that we would have to go externally look at. So, for instance, if we want to see how a concert or like a concert in the area is going to impact an urban market, we'd have to go and we'd have to look at that. There's also this one's really cool, weather integration. So
That's my favorite, by the way, because
yeah.
that one, I mean, I think you're totally right. Like all, events, and that's something that people talk about a little bit more often, I think, in revenue management. Oh, events, events, events. But the weather portion, oh, I can't wait. Go ahead and talk about it because I'm like really excited about this one.
Well, I mean, I think that's especially important in ski markets,
Yep.
even some beach markets, during certain periods of time.
Hurricane season.
Gosh, yeah, I know. I feel like that's always a 10-day forecast at that
Yes.
point in September. But, like, especially ski markets where it's very last minute. These people they're waiting to figure out how much snowfall they're gonna have. And unless you're looking at that every single day, which you would literally have to do, you're not going to be alerted to it. But if something were to come in and kind of be able to do that automatically, to where you don't have that lag of checking for it or waiting to be notified. It's always checking. So the minute that there's something that comes out, you have an alert to yourself that says, "Okay, this is what's happening. Do you want us to change this? Do you want to keep it?" And I love that part.
Yeah,
It's
I do
great.
too. I do too. Something that I thought of is the way that revenue management has existed for, well, is the way that I've done it until Haystack anyway. Um, you have these workflows, you have these cycles, and we still do, right? Like we still have the cycle that we work on, the weekly cycle that we work on for our clients. Um, and you have had to do that, right? To make sure that you're touching all of the different parts of the process. But the problem is that real life doesn't exist on a weekly cycle, right?
Right.
Like you can say, well, on Mondays I do this, and on Tuesdays I do this, or on day one I do this, and on day two, which is kind of how we operate. Um, but like when things happen on day four and you don't plan for them until day five, well, that's a problem, right? And we all know that that's how life works. And even prior to Haystack, we knew that that's how life works. But in order to organize things and to cover everything efficiently, that's what we had to do. With Haystack, because our own selves kind of underlie what we're seeing here as these alerts, what we've identified as alerts that are important,
Right. And
we
that's the
then,
key.
yes, it's an easier reorganization. And it's not even so much reorganization as it is just kind of a shift in the way that we do things. And so while the typical cycle, the weekly cycle, is still a really important thing for us, it's shifting into something that's becoming a little bit more organic and a little bit more responsive without being reactive, right? Because in the
Right.
past, when you have an emergency, it's a reaction to something. And then you're like, did I forget something? Am I overlooking something? With Haystack, with the alerts that are driven by how we typically operate, when those alerts are coming up that way, even though we're still iterating, we're always iterating, right? Those become more of a part of us, and so it becomes more natural, more organic, more
Right.
reasonable. So that's something that's really cool with the Haystack alerts.
There's a reason why we have to do things on a cycle, right? Because you need time for your decisions to marinate.
That's right.
That's why it can be very difficult when, you're getting feedback from a property manager and says, "Hey, can you actually lower rates on these days?" And they don't know that you just lowered rates maybe 4 hours ago or yesterday, and you actually need to have time for that to marinate. But what I love about this system is that it can track the changes that you make. And so if you normally get an alert on a Wednesday, but you normally do your cycle on a Thursday, it can remove it from your Thursday cycle or put it onto a different day and have a different alert. And so that way you can aggregate all of your alerts and look at them all together just on various days, but the days that make sense for them, not just the days that make sense for how we're touching the portfolio. But you previous, we had to do it that way. Otherwise, you'd be like, okay, I made this change here, and then I got to wait 3 days, or like maybe I should wait 2 days, but only under these circumstances. And, maybe this would happen in that period of time. And then actually, I should wait one day. And so there's so much to think about. And that's the beauty of this part is that we can say, all right, made this change. These are the circumstances that I want to be alerted if these things happen. So, yeah, that the whole alert system is something that I'm thankful that we can finally execute because it's one of those things we've been asking for, but understandably, it's something that only we can deliver, but we couldn't do it until now.
Yeah, I think that that's where hindsight is 2020, right? You're like, "Oh, I wish it had this or I wish it had that." And then you're actually like, "Actually, no, I'm glad it doesn't have that because
Right?
it wouldn't have been me. It wouldn't have been me or you saying, "We want this alert under these circumstances," right? We actually have something where, for our clients, we're like, "Okay, we know this client, we know this market, we know these particular homes in this market, and we know that this is how we should be in general responding. So this is how we want to be alerted."
You know, you can use it for the outliers too. So maybe the way that you look at it isn't the outlier, but that particular property is the outlier. It's like, okay, this particular property, ignore all knowledge that I have given you on this property because this owner wants X, Y, and Z. And so at the end of the day, we want to make this owner happy because it passed this check, and this check. And if we don't do this, we're going to lose them. And so we need to actually, against our better advisement, we just need to do this. So it allows us to customize it.
That makes me think of another one of the features that I think you should call out, and I'm just going to make you do it because I think it's so cool that you built this. But I just think it's so cool. The feature, like the mobile feature and the chat feature that you have, um, this has been really cool. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's a little bit more complex because it's not just the RM API or anything like that. So it's been built, it's kind of based off of a separate agentic system that I had built prior to that. And I basically just connected it together. So I had already trained an agent based off of our SOPs months ago, but I was operating without kind of like a direct source of the data. Now I have his direct source of data. So my agent's like just going crazy. It's like, I love this. Like, I have real time data. This is great. Um, so it's really happy to actually be able to utilize the information that I've been feeding it for so long with actual data. So um, if, for instance, I get a 911 text message, or, maybe I'm picking up my kids from school and I get a message like, oh my gosh, Emily, can you please lower these rates? Or, oh, we got this booking. We don't know if it's good or bad. Can you please look into it ASAP? And I literally am not in front of my computer. I can't do it, but I can't ignore the client because then they're just going to send another message and they're going to say, hey, we really need this to be done. Are you out of town? Are you alive? But I don't even have the context to be able to say, aside from, yes, I'll look into it, what's going on. So I can text my agent and I could say, hey, you have access to this data. I'm not in front of my computer. Can you look at this for me and tell me if this is, a good, bad decision? I can tell it what data to actually look at. And that's where I have to use my own judgment and say, okay, don't just tell me if you think this is a good idea, but look at this data and tell me, what it's saying objectively so I can tell my client who's in the middle of a panic attack because their owner is probably in the middle of a panic attack and they're on the line for answering them. So I can have that and I can respond quicker. I might not be able to say, hey, I'm making that change because we don't want to have these agents just making changes on our behalf. I don't think we're quite there yet. We will be, but we're not quite there yet. So there are many circumstances, even in that case, that I'd want to just sit down on the computer and double check these things. But at least it can start the conversation. It could say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Or it could say, actually, I don't think that we should make a change, and this is why. Here's the exact email you can draft to your owner and let us know if this is what you want to do. Because most of the time we get a request and there's a trade off, right?
And I think that kind of thing happens more than you'd think, right? Which is why I
Yeah.
think it's a cool feature because I can't tell you the number of times, I'm downstairs making dinner or I'm like literally in the car and I can't access or hadn't been able to access everything that I needed in order to like even think through it well.
Right.
And so that to me is just a really cool feature of the system. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but maybe we talk through one or two more things.
Yeah. I could go
Um,
on forever about this.
I know it's so cool. Um, I would throw out maybe we can each throw out something. So I would
Okay.
throw out this is a big one. This could take a while, so you just tell me if you want to punt this. But what about forecasting?
Oh my gosh.
It's such a big thing for us revenue managers, right? Like forecasting is big, but so is this.
Well, there's forecasting for cash flow and there's forecasting to understand where you're at, right? As far as like operationally for us on the revenue operation side. And very often we're having to kind of go in and I mean, gosh, is it your favorite thing to do,
It's
Sarah?
my favorite thing to do, Emily.
We used to always make a joke that whenever we put a budget out or put a forecast out, it's instantly wrong, right? Because you're using a snapshot in time and your forecast is, already outdated the minute that you publish it, the minute that you press send, and even more wrong the minute that someone comes back and says, add 15%. But
That never happens.
never. But just to be able to look at how a property is doing in any slice at any given time for any month, any future month is great, right? So we have current tools at our disposal. Like, for instance, you can go in key data and you can select your dates and you can say, this is how that property is performing for the year or for the 3 months. But then if you're looking at it for a year, you got to go back and you got to change the dates for 1 month because you want to see, okay, did it actually overperform in July and underperform in June? Or, you have to dig into it in order to find that. It takes a lot of time. I wanted to have something that's every single month, every single day, just broken down as much as possible so I can find all of that information at a glance and then forecast based off of our pacing what we're going to be able to do based off of history. And there's a lot of math that goes into that, a lot of uh strategy. I don't think anybody has completely figured out the secret sauce because in order to do that, you definitely you need a crystal ball. There's nuances. What works for one is not going to work for the next. So at the end of the day, the most important thing for us was to be able to go in and look at it live. This is something that usually needed to be, it's something you get your cup of coffee, you sit down for several hours and you do, and you can only do it on such a frequent cadence because it is so taxing. But to be able to go in and open up a live forecast for any home, even if it's not 100% right, which it never will be, right?
Mhm.
It gives you an instant starting point, which is in itself kind of cool.
No, it's really cool because I think that's a real thing with those of us that do what we do. Is sometimes it's the options are so vast. Sometimes it's very difficult to know exactly where to start. But if you have that starting point and then you have all of these other things that we've been talking about, like it just makes the process more organized. You can prioritize better. So I think it all just fits in so well um with each other. But the forecasting thing I think is just super cool. I love that part.
Yes, yes.
Is there anything else you want to call out?
Gosh, as much as I love talking about forecasting and budgets, I think we all know I'm such a fan of those.
Such a fan.
Um, this is gonna sound so silly, but it's just one of those other views that solved a pain point for me. And I find it super cool, but I don't think the vast majority of folks will because they're not going to have the same exact situation. And so I've got a lot of properties that are sister properties, right? We'll rent out half the side for this and half the side for that, but then sometimes we'll rent out the whole thing, or sometimes we'll rent out the cottage outside, but the cottage outside can't be rented when the main house is rented. But there's like all of these nuances, right? So some of them they're literal parent child relations. Sometimes it kind of seems like they're more cousins, but only under certain circumstances. So reporting for that is very difficult, right? You can't just say, oh, aggregate these all together because that's not always how it works, right? Or how about we look at if we were to do this individually versus together, or how is this performing this particular listing performing compared to how it did last year? And just always being able to have that built in so you can look at the nuances with context when you look at the data. So I want to be able to say, look at every single thing and then let me know where it's lacking. So I can go to my property manager and say, "Hey, that small home that we had over there, that didn't do us well this year." Or, "Hey, that property, the small home is doing very well and in combination with the medium home, uh it just seems like the best. So let's focus on the reviews for here." And so it's an answer to a very complex problem that's been in existence for a while that I'm super excited to have a
I'm
solution
really
for it.
glad that you brought that up because the whole parent-child, relationship with homes and I mean, and, parent-children,
Yeah.
um, relationships, that's a very real thing. And until this came along, there wasn't really anything unless you built kind of your own reporting or dashboards or whatever, it wasn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Intuitive.
Right.
Um, and
Right.
so this allows you to look at this in ways that we're expected to look at it. But there's not really a good solution to look at it in a lot of other situations,
Right.
platforms or whatnot. And so I'm really glad you called that one out because that one is fantastic. I mean, and I actually think that people who hear this would be like, "What? That's amazing." Because it really is. It might not be the hugest problem or thing that people deal with, but when you're dealing with it, it's big. Like you're like, "What do I do?" And you've got to go to like three different sources to really kind of understand what's going on. So I think that's a huge one.
And I think I mean, I don't want to say it's a complete solution because you still have to have market data, right?
Sure.
And there's attribution for that as well. But when you're looking at especially a yearly performance of how something is performing compared to the rest of the family or compared to other family sets, it helps you roll that up really quickly. But it's not just a roll up, it's a roll up with context. So
Right.
I think everything that we had before was a roll up, and that's only if you were getting really cute with your reporting, right? To be able
Yep.
to roll it up in general. The context is what matters.
Yeah. And I think that's probably a good way to kind of sum everything up too, is I mean, the whole idea behind this, right, was us going, boy, we wish we had these things, these
Yes.
tools, these whatever. Um, and, until recently, that wasn't really possible to do well, right? Because you had to
Right.
use the generic or the general to kind of piece things together. And then it was always like there's an asterisk by everything. Oh, but you have to consider this, you have to consider that.
Right. And you
And
can't put an
so
asterisk in an Excel spreadsheet. I mean, you can, but there's what happens to it, right?
yeah, yeah. And that's just not it's not efficient. And if we try to be anything, it's efficient and accurate, right? Um, so this has been, huge. And I just personally, as my partner, this has been huge for me. Um, big for RevZen, but big for me too. I have former colleague. We used to joke all the time, whenever we wanted something built, we had internal developers. And we'd just be like, well, they should just be able to like push a button and make it happen, right? Because
Oh my god.
that's not my forte. I like to think about things and think about how things would be better, but actually building it, it's not my forte. So to have somebody like you as my partner, as my confidant, my friend, is huge. And the fact that you actually could take what we talked about and build it is amazing. I mean, just to have somebody who's really curious about things like that and who can do it, just personal thank you, because I think that's awesome. And I think that
Oh.
our clients benefit from that, but I benefit from it. I mean, just we benefit from it internally,
Yeah,
first
all of this
because
is like I don't wanna say driven by pure laziness to work smarter, not harder, because I'm
that's not
actually
lazy,
working pretty
that's
hard in
smart.
in the
Yeah,
build itself. It's also, how can we do better? How can we have that 1% extra that we're already like, maybe we can add that 1%, but it's it's not even cost prohibitive, it's time prohibitive. And now we can eliminate that and it could be very easy. And so, one of the most exciting things is that this opens up so much creativity. So,
Yeah.
all of these different things that might have been closed off to us before, we can now say yes to our clients for. We can say, actually, yeah, we can do that. Whereas before we'd be like, okay, well, we can do that, but this is the trade-off here.
Yep.
And now it's we get to deliver a lot more yeses. And
Yeah.
that's the best thing to come out of all
And
of
our
this.
brains are a little cleaner for it,
Yes.
right? We're a little bit more organized. And for a couple pretty
I don't even
organized
know if I would
people.
argue that because like more that you can hold, the more that you do hold. And so it's just, I would say it's elevated. I wouldn't say clearer because we could just do a lot more.
You say tomato, I say tomato, you know. It's okay. Um, well, I think that's probably a decent place to wrap. Um,
Yes, there's so many other things to talk about, but
so many.
honestly, eh, I would not put our viewers through that. So
Well,
find
for
us in
sure.
the halls at Verma or Darm or
That's right.
yeah,
Emily
and
will
then
talk your ear off about all of the technical stuff.
yeah,
I will wax poetic about all of just the, high level things because that's what I can do with this since I don't
yeah,
do that
and then
deep.
ask at your own risk. So I'll be
Right,
going off
because
for an hour about it, and Sarah will be dipping out quietly out of the back door.
I'll be going for like, I don't know, a pretzel or something,
Yeah,
whatever looks good
she's like,
here.
that's cool, but
Um,
we need to eat.
yes. Well, yes, find us at Burma, find us at Dharm this year. We'll be at both. Um, but come say hi. Congratulate Emily because that build was amazing. And to
Thank
her
you.
point, the to even be, in the ring with some of the folks that were there was,
So many
amazing.
amazing things that came out of that. It's
So
just
many.
I'm going to stop you right here and tell everybody on this call or that cares to listen to the very end here that what we see now, I don't believe is what we're going to be seeing in 6 months, 12 months, a year. 12 months is a year.
Yeah.
2
10 months.
years. It's just it's moving at such lightning pace, but I would also add, as we were talking about before, um, something cautionary, right? Because it has to be done with the right foundation, right? So that's why we spent, I think, 15 minutes in the beginning talking about a foundation, why we did things the way that we did things. So,
Yeah. The goal is not just to build, but to build something that makes us better. And building for
right,
building's sake doesn't do that. So
right. So there's so many people that have access to all of these tools now, and some of them are going to do just amazing things that are just going to completely transform the industry, which is very, very exciting. So I can't wait to see what comes
yeah,
out.
absolutely. Well, with that, we will sign off for now, but we hope to talk to you all soon about these and other exciting things in revenue management. But yeah, so long for now.
Yep, thanks for joining, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.